Oh hey, didn't see you there. For a few months now, the AC's finally fixed. Yeah. And now you just caught me in the middle of my toughest battle yet. Deciding the right kind of laundry detergent to use. While stories of epic battles and unrealistic fantasies called romance often cloud the storytelling space in TV and films, anime has one of the most grounded yet incredibly popular genre make its rounds every season to remind us all how even the most mundane, everyday event can be a hardship. God damn it. Slice of life anime. The life simulator games of anime. There was a point in time when the cultural idealization of anime was either big epic stories, heavy angsty drama, or the thing the internet became famous for. And sometimes all three. But now, anime is filled with all kinds of stories and shows that have reached a modern audience of wider acceptance and accessibility. And among those kinds of tales is the somewhat consistent glimpse into the lives we'll never have but are oh so close to touching. Slice of life. The genre you go to when you say to yourself, I want to mentally escape somewhere, but some places are too far for thinking distance. The slice of life genre is a surface level simplicity with subterranean appeal of gazing into the quaintness of said simple structure. It's quite an enigma. Was conceptually a rickety idea, the slice of life genre has bloomed into one of anime's most beloved forms of storytelling through the simple groundwork of said conceptual foundation, mixed with the traditions of Japan's humanized political outlook on reservation and free expression. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. The history and influence of the slice of life genre isn't as solidified as others because of its volatile definition, and I think that's kind of interesting in itself. And boy is it a long history, because surprisingly, and I found this out myself in researching this, life existed before anime. I know, crazy, right? Yeah, according to historians, people lived. And not only that, they lived fulfilling lives. Fascinating. And in living, some of those people chronicled what it meant to live, in the form of storytelling. Back when our ancestors told their kin about hunting the great bears of Chicago, and traveling the distant icelands occupied by mammoths, sloths, tigers, and babies, the daily retellings of how we lived was important to pass on that knowledge for sustainability. And much like the timberwolves we raised among ourselves, the evolution of slice of life changed from feral tales of survival to docile, borderline horrifically inbred showpieces to entertain. The only real difference between the dogs and stories is who's suffering. So, by today's standards, what is slice of life? You ask me as the one and only reliant source of defining categorical media dispositions? Well, I'm glad you asked. I respond with a humbled superiority. Slice of life is, by definition, a slice of life. This is why you come to me for my knowledge. It's the depiction of everyday life seen through a leveled and sometimes circumstantial lens of the artist. It can range from the funny happenstances of a group of friends or the rich knowledge of a certain subject matter, like a job or a hobby. And while very much popularized in Japanese media as of late, the slice of life genre has been around for centuries across the globe. While the exact pinpointed date of the first slice of life work can't be nailed, it's that abstract and open-ended idea of living life through the vicarious ways of a writer that marks the genre as timeless in a way. That also means the first official slice of life anime is hard to identify, not just in the broad sense, but in the timely sense too. I couldn't quite find a reliable source on any solid claims, which I can only assume means people forgot to tell other people to tell people how to live up until a certain point. But I think I got a somewhat good candidate for the first popular slice of life show. Sazai-san, or Mrs. Sazai, was a simple 1969 show that depicted the daily life of a housewife and her family. I myself haven't seen the show, but I see these clips and think, yep, that certainly looks like a life. And it looks like a neat piece of anime history, so I can't wait to sit down and watch. Wait, it's still on? Yeah, apparently Sazai-san is not only still being made, but is unlikely to end anytime soon. It's more likely life on Earth will die out before life in this cartoon world will. And it's unlikely I'll ever finish it. Not just because watching it would sacrifice any semblance of a life it's trying to depict, but because the copyright on the show is weirdly strict. Yeah, these clips I'm showing you were the few I could find on YouTube and the Internet Archive, and that's about it. There's no legal streaming or home video distribution of the show of any kind. I have no idea what ties this housewife has in Japan, but damn, With the longevity and protection, you'd think her source material is kept in the Qumran caves or something. Well, after Sazae-san, the next big shows came in the next decade, both based on Western novels, Heidi, Girl of the Alps, and Anne of Green Gables. While both are more coming-of-age tales, aging is also part of life, a slice of life, if you will. Both are very similar in that they're about young girls adopted into unusual families and facing their own trials and tribulations of adapting to new environments. Heidi's life in the Alps is mostly fine, but since it's in the mountains, there's no doctors, so they probably have to go to the veterinarian instead. As for Anne, well, her story is so popular it actually got readapted. They didn't have to do that, the original's pretty good on its own, but they went and made another good Anne again for the heck of it. And this time she doesn't look like if Megamind wore Wendy's wig. After those two, the slice of life scene was pretty steady, with an okay show here and there and an occasional movie. And then came 1992, where I think modern comedy slice of life came about, where some producers asked themselves, how about a show where a mom casually talks to her toddler about hard drugs?
What? You want an allowance? You just wasted on stupid kitty crap like trading cards, video games, and crystal meth.
Duh, can't you read it says allowance, please? Now you've left me no choice. I'm going on spike.
You mean you're going to start injecting heroin?
Why should I?
Crayon Shin-chan is a family comedy about the life of a kindergartner and his rambunctious unit. Now, the American dub by Funimation was very much an artistic choice, but the original is not too far off. But what Shin-chan achieved was a simple but humorous dive into the modern lives of a nuclear family. And by nuclear, I mean established, and not the aftermath of a horrific fallout, as this style would lead you to believe. It's a fun and funny show that's one of anime's most defining comedies that, again, no reasonable person with a life would binge because this too is still being made. Yeah, I believe it was Benjamin Franklin who said it first. In this world, nothing can be said to be certain except for death, taxes, and the next episode of Rugrats with Robot Chicken writing. As Shin-chan continues, it's pretty telling how flexible the modern definition of slice of life has become. For as crude the writing is, and with how long the show has been on to a point that this kid should be a working adult, there is a suspension of disbelief to be had when tackling the small matter of everyday life. It's because of this loose definition that you can almost call anything reasonably realistic slice of life. Something like Tom Sawyer or Barakamon are clear-cut examples, where the atmospheric and emotional motivations guide the story of believable growth in life. But what about something that's atmospherically weighted, like a comedy like King of the Hill or Azumanga Daioh? Or a work that's like a day-to-day setup with fantastical elements prominently there too, like Alps or My Neighbor Totoro. Again, you can reasonably make a case for those works as slice-of-life pieces because the definition doesn't say you can't. As long as they depict everyday life, even with giant cat monsters, an alien who would probably want to eat those cats, or men obsessed with propane and propane accessories, there's slice of life until further notice. You know, down the line, there's probably going to be some troll who says that the Endless 8 is his favorite slice of life. Yeah, no duh. Everyone loves the Endless 8. Of course, you can't just say anything's a slice of life. Even if One Piece has chill moments between the crew, it's still a pirate fantasy first and foremost. Even if Slam Dunk is more grounded and realistic, it's still a sports story that follows a set narrative of tropes and director writing to a formula. Even if the movie Dave focused a smaller emphasis on the life of a big man, it's not entirely relatable due to the overarching events of the story. I mean, come on. A public servant being held accountable for illegal transgressions? Yeah, be more realistic. So it's a case-by-case basis on how to define all of these works that really only about half the population would actually care about. But if you were to ask me, I personally point to the idea of art itself as the deciding factor, the purpose. As with all art, intention is one of the defining factors of setting the genre. Want a story about the growing powers of a government or population portrayed in analogous weaponry? There's the mech genre for that. Itching for a historical tale that ties the social bindings of the past to modern idealism? Historical dramas. Searching for the exploration of psychosomatic satisfaction of innate humanistic urges? There's at least 34 you can find on the internet alone. With slice of life, much of the burden of connection lies in its relatability. By keeping the experience of the events genuine, these shows and films aim to have a reasonable vantage point of where the emotional and social draw is coming from. Not everyone's gonna go fishing with a club of breakwater enthusiasts, but just about everybody's known a group of eccentric hobbyists or even been a part of one themselves. Not everyone's had crippling social anxiety, but everybody's had a moment in their lives of extreme nervousness to a near breaking point. It's these little moments and feelings that don't feel big, but are understood in a big way. A way that's not universal, but highly resonant. Yes, it can range from contained ideas like romance, friendship, or family life, but it can also expand to broader topics like mental health, or more nuanced situations like comedy. It's actually because of this expanded domain that eventually has slice of life split into subgenres. Splice of life, if you will. Boo! We just talked about the coming-of-age stories, which are essentially those that emphasize growing into adulthood in some fashion, like Anne or Clannad. Similarly, there's the Bildungsroman, which is a specific coming-of-age tale focused on psychological growth like Whisper of the Heart or Marsh Comes In Like a Lion. Ieshike is a unique one, as it focuses on setting and atmosphere rather than story or character, building the experience of being around the life part of slice of life. Shows like Mushishi, Laid Back Camp, and Non Non Biyori, to name a few. For comedies, there's quite a few. Gag comedies tend to be pretty out there, but they sometimes land in the specific niche of familiarity that's close enough to warrant a label, like Hyako, Servant Service, and even Nichijou. Shows that showcase specific hobbies or jobs highlight smaller communities in the world that still deserve a small recognition of being a part of life, that they're fairly popularized despite how narrow they can be, like Shirobako or Megane Boo. And within that subgenre tends to be the arguable most famous of the sub-subgenres, CGDCT, cute girls doing cute things. With the amount of cute girls doing cute things over there in Japan, the most random industries must be filled with young ladies with encyclopedic levels of knowledge and anime levels of plot armor. You name it, animating, yosakoi, pottery, glass blowing, moped riding, being a witch, lesbianing. Japan truly is one of the great innovators of the world. With all these sorts of stories and ways to tell them, the slice of life genre has evolved with the modern day like no other because it evolved alongside the modern day. One of the biggest strengths of the genre is how it incorporates the natural zeitgeist of whatever modern social issues are present, regardless of time period. An older film like Only Yesterday captures a familiar idea of growing up and experiencing tiny but impactful events to a similar degree as a more recent example like Akebi's Sailor Uniform, is how they interact with the respective atmospheres that differentiate themselves thematically. One's about adolescence and nostalgia, and the other's about self-interest and living in the moment. And it ranges in all kinds of predicaments and situations. It can be a show about nothing or a show about seemingly nothing. I think that's where the most integral part of the genre lies, is centering on the ordinary. And yeah, I know I've been saying that for like the past 5 minutes or so, but to really put into perspective, 2 examples come to mind. The first is Working. Despite its horror premise of working in the food industry, it's not. It's a workplace comedy that caricatures the weirdos of a restaurant. Not everyone will connect to the situations, but they can easily identify with the characters as those who seem somewhat familiar IRL. It's also really formulaic. And the second is Chihaya Furu, a coming-of-age story that reverses an age-old adage. It's not about believing in the heart of the cards, it's the cards that believe in your heart. On the surface, it's a nice tale of growing with a children's game, but as it goes along, it becomes more prominent as the story of making full use of youth and love for special interests. Both of these shows are textbook in showing how slice of life modernized social and cultural storytelling. In observing people and social constructs, they key in on the sharp lens on the changing or static times that aren't nothing in this world of living. It's here where it becomes profoundly obvious why the genre continues to grow and become more popularized. In the media world of superpowers, fantastic stories, and die-hard themes and devices, the respite of the familiar somehow stays fresh as life evolves around us. All the while, the modest keeps us sane from the real world's problems. For every Naruto, there's a lucky star. For every Neon Genesis Evangelion, there's a Doraemon. Hell, some big shows like Slime Isekai and Soul Eater make spin-offs solely for capturing a slice of life essence in their respective worlds. Not only do they portray a new side to their world building, but they interject the values and core ideas of comfort living in a unique brand. And that's why I connect with slice of life on a personal level. Whether if it's in a vast world like in Space Brothers, or in a big show toned down like in the Amiya Family, or in a big blue room, we all just have to keep moving forward in this universe, with the tales of the mundane and the routine to keep us company. It's not always going to be easy, but with the comfort of storytellers relaying cute girls doing cute things, it makes this little slice of life a tad easier to digest. But now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go tackle my next first world problem. What I want to watch as I eat lunch.